As the first year of Pulp Mortem draws to a close, I've decided to look back on the obscure science fiction books I've read. For those who are unfamiliar with what I'm doing here, you'll soon find out. You won't see an Asimov, or a Herbert, or a Dick, or a Bradbury on this list. No, everybody knows they're great already. But I've spent a year rummaging through the thrift shops, antique stores, and discount racks to find unknown and obscure sci-fi authors in the hopes that there are some treasures buried within. Was this year a pulpy waste of time, or did I actually find some lost classics? Some obscure work of art that even SF enthusiasts haven't heard of? Well, I'm pleased to say, yes, I have found some great novels. While only 2 this year achieved museum rank, in hindsight there probably were a few that should have made that list, and there were many that just missed out on it, just by a hair. For this list, I'm only considering books that I've episodically reviewed on this channel. So books that we've talked about on the Elusive Exclusive Book Society, other book clubs I've in, or even books that I've just read on the sides will not be eligible for this list. So here we go. Out of the 42 books I've reviewed on my channel this year, here are the top 10 best sci-fi books of 2024. Number 10, West of the Sun. This was the first personal collection, or 4 out of 5 ranked story I reviewed this year, and it's held its place in the top quarter. This is a planet colonization novel that doesn't stray too far from the formula, but what makes it stand out are memorable characters and some of the best battle sequences I've read this year. Edgar Pangborn expertly crafted Heart of Darkness in space, and for being squishy soft sci-fi, there is an undeniable realism here. Number 9, Outpost Mars. This is a murder mystery / western on Mars, and I absolutely loved it. SF powerhouses C.M. Kornbluth and Judith Merrill joined forces as Cyril Judd to deliver this immersive and enjoyable slow burn. Outpost Mars was the first and only of my videos to get picked up by YouTube's enigmatic algorithm, bringing in 6 times the typical number of views. Outpost Mars was the initial connection point for many of you, and as such, I'll always be grateful for this novel. The High Crusade. Paul Anderson's medieval satire is, simply put, awesome. This was a winner from a poll I put up, and I was not disappointed. Tons of action, loads of fun. This satire is played straight. It's serious comedy taken seriously. The setting is ridiculous, but Anderson's deft imagination had the ticket bought, me on board and buckled up from the onset to the final page. If you have not read The High Crusade yet, what are you waiting for? Was the groundbreaking novel Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy a cheap imitation of Dimension of Miracles? Probably. This is an entertaining and very funny science fiction adventure, absolutely drenched with Robert Sheckley's biting sarcasm and dark nihilism. Dimension of Miracles bounces from scenes of silliness to outright horror, but somehow doesn't lose the reader. This book exists in the paradox, and the darkly beautiful and poignant ending makes this one unforgettable. The Winds of Time by Chad Oliver. I had recently met an old man who asked what I did. Once I told him, he asked if I had ever heard of an author named Chad Oliver, a sadly underrated science fiction author, because Chad Oliver was this man's father's best friend. I told this old man not only was I familiar with Chad Oliver, I had just finished reading this book, and as I told him how much I enjoyed it, the expression on that old man's face has stuck with me. This one earned a strong personal collection rating, and what is more, it caused some real emotions to stir in me. Don't sleep on this pulpy Richard Powers cover, or the fact that Oliver is relatively unknown. This is an excellent book that deserves more acclaim. Number 5, Candle in the Sun by Robert Wells. This was the most recent review on this list, but recency bias has nothing to do with this wild fever dream landing at number 5. Often confusing and frankly flawed, the surreal mystery and world building were so strong and engrossing that it overcomes its shortcomings. This won't be everyone's cup of tea, but risk-taking art never is. Let me put a finer point on it. This book is freaking awesome. Number 4, Chapayeca, or Blueface by G.C. Edmondson. Edmondson leads us on an unforgettable alien adventure through the Mexican mountains, but the end revelation and subsequent tonal shift will rock you. Unfortunately, if you watch my review on this one, you'll see that Blueface requires some homework before reading, and it was that decision that denied it the museum rank. That flaw would be fatal for many a book, but despite that, Blueface is in the semifinals, and he isn't even sweating. Now we come to the top 3. These are the heavyweights. These are the books that weren't just pretty good for old sci-fi. No, these are great books. Everyone on this list so far has been a talented author, but without a doubt, the most talented author here is Keith Roberts. I'm very pleased to see a few other booktubers talk about this under-the-radar UK author lately, because Roberts' talents elevate his content. He is most well known for Pavan and Kite World, but even his first novel, The Furies, was something special. If you would have told me that a disaster/post-apocalyptic yarn about giant killer wasps would be one of my favorite books this year, I'd have called you crazy, but here we are. This book rocks. But Robert's decision to leave a certain plot thread loose and dangling at the end, if you've read this then you'll know what I'm talking about, was nothing short of genius. That decision was the best writing decision I've read all year. And I've read Hyperion this year. Seahorse in the Sky. Edmund Cooper, like the fellow UK author I just mentioned, is one of those authors that if I stumble across one of their books, I buy it. No question. To me, this book perfectly embodies what science fiction is to me. There's no other influence here, no other genre it touches, but pure, undiluted, speculative fiction. As a writer, I'm constantly searching out inspiration, be it in conversation, an idea, a concept I read about, or just everyday life. I'm looking for something to open the heavens, a revelation. I'm looking for the muse to grab me and whisper her untold secrets. That is Seahorse in the Sky. This book is a bucket of lighter fluid dumped upon the creative spark. From the cover to the final page, I adore this weird little mystery. Number 1, the best book I read this year, Dinosaur Beach. Unlike our last two authors, Keith Laumer was prolific and well known in the science fiction community, but he was never viewed as one of the elite. He isn't on anyone's best of list and was never considered for a Nebula, Hugo, or any accolades really. His quality was inconsistent, and one would be accurate in categorizing Laumer as a journeyman, receiving as much criticism as he did praise. Perhaps that's what makes Dinosaur Beach so special. Laumer's skill as a writer is levels below Roberts or Cooper, but this story is phenomenal. It reminds me of some cooking competition shows. Sure, you can reduce this, sous vide that, garnish, and shoes up a dish all fancy, but at the end of the day, often the winner is not the most technical, but what tastes the best. What do I want to go back to? What makes me take bite after bite? Laumer is not a pretentious wordsmith, but I could not get enough of what he was cooking. I could not set this book down. Plans were canceled because I couldn't stop reading it. I don't even want to tell you about it. I mean, just go read it. Like, it's called Dinosaur Beach. Like, that's awesome, right? As good as all the books on this list were, deciding the number 1 spot was easy. In fact, it wasn't even close. And that is the top 10 best of 2024. Will 2025 have more obscure and underrated classics to discover? I'm sure of it. But first, the man.